The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday night. I hope everybody's having a great week and ready for the weekend. It's almost here. All right, but I hope you're enjoying your week, your work week. Hope everything's going well at work and that you are being productive. All right, so today we're going to cover a number of different topics. Most of the time, I think we're going to spend on the Russian economy. And we're then going to talk about, well, I might flip the order. So we might talk about the Russian economy, then are we in a recession? Because those are both economic related. And Alicia wants me to talk about the economy so she can go off on a date. And then we'll talk about Orban, which is the most depressing of all the topics. So we'll talk about that last. So that is the order of what we have. Let's see. Yes. So it turns out that if you go on to the show and you put a super chat on like a couple of hours before the show starts, that somehow gets deleted. I still get the money. That's cool. But the questions get deleted. They get archived somewhere. I can find them, but they get archived somewhere. And I don't know that you were ever there, so I don't know that there was any issue. So yesterday we had 3 questions that were asked well in advance, I think by Europeans who didn't want to stay up late to listen to the show, but asked the questions and then left, and they disappeared. I did find them, and Phil and Albert were very generous in, there were significant dollars associated with the questions. So what I want to do now is answer these 3 questions quickly, and then we'll get to our topic. So I'll answer these 3 so that they get returned for their investment, which they made yesterday, and then we can jump into to today's topics. So let me start with Phil, and this relates to yesterday's topic. He says, Wahiri is dead. Shouldn't someone have mentioned the importance of timing to his all-seeing God? Better late than never is not really an excuse in the mystical gibberish business, at least not according to the pixies in my garden. I'm not exactly sure what Phil is getting to here, but I did mention yesterday, and I think it's worth reiterating, that it took the United States a hell of a long time to kill this bastard. It took them 21 years, and I don't think that's excusable. I think I consider that a failure of intelligence, a failure of military strategy, a failure across the board. He should not have been this hard to find. He should have been easy to locate and to destroy. I think a lot of this has to do with collateral damage. By the way, they sat on the info that he was in this building, for weeks, maybe a couple of months, trying to figure out if they could figure out a way, because Biden had told them, only kill him, don't kill anybody else. So to figure out if they could kill him without any collateral damage, they clearly risked him getting away during this period. How many other times over the last 21 years have they had him and then couldn't pull the trigger because of fear for collateral damage or something else? So it's pretty disgusting. The guy should have died a long time ago. And I'm sure Allah will embrace him with 72 virgins, no matter what the timing. Although he's a little old, so maybe I don't know if you get rejuvenated in that way in heaven with the virgins. Although what the appeal of 72 virgins is exactly, I have never understood. Now 72 experienced women, that I get, but 72 virgins is not appealing kind of in almost any way. All right, second question Phil asked, is the UN is a waste of time, effort, and my money, plus a prime piece of real estate? I'd like the government here in Britain to recognize Taiwan, tell the psycho totalitarians on the Security Council to reproduce with themselves, and sell nuke tech to Taiwan via Amazon Prime. Again, Phil, I'm completely with you. I've many times, it's not just that the UN is a waste of time. The UN is an fundamentally immoral institution, maybe one of the most immoral institutions in human history. The United States should withdraw from it, as should the UK. There is no institution. An institution cannot be moral that has the Soviet Union and communist China, when it was communist or fascist China today, sitting in the Security Council with veto power over all decisions. An institution cannot be moral when countries like Cuba and Syria and Libya take turns heading up the Human Rights Commission. This is a fundamentally, deeply immoral, egalitarian institution that should be disbanded. They should be sent home. As you say, the real estate in New York is incredibly valuable. I suggest, and I've suggested for many years, that they relocate to Caracas in Venezuela. They loved the Venezuelan dictators and have for a very long time. They could also relocate to Tehran or a number of other countries that I think are appropriate for this organization. New York is the opposite of appropriate. New York is a true travesty that they are in New York. And yes, the Western world should recognize Taiwan. It should recognize Taiwan. It should also ultimately sell nuclear weapons to Taiwan, but certainly recognize Taiwan. It is the legitimate country here. And yes, the Chinese will be pissed off, but what is exactly China going to do about it? And when we talk in a bit about Russia, I think a lot of what we're going to say about Russia and Russian economy is relevant to China, and I think is a cause for China to think twice about real conflict with the West. All right, let's see. Ooh, Valdrin says I look great. I hope I look as good when I'm 60. Yeah, but will you look as good when you're 61 like me? That's the question. He says, great haircut. Yes, I did get a haircut today. Yeah, I might want to have it a little shorter on top, but we'll see. All right, let's see. Albert's question, completely on a different topic, but we'll do this quickly and then we'll jump in to talking about Russia. Hi, Iran, leaving this now for later. Big mistake. What are your favorite violin pieces? What do you think of Sibelius's Violin Concerto? It is one of my favorite songs of all time. Song. I don't think of it as a song. Anyway, so I'm not gonna cover all my favorite violin pieces. I'd have to really think that through and pull out a lot of stuff because there's so much. The sonatas, the trios. There's so much music for violin. So I'm going to focus on the concertos, and I would definitely put Sibelius's Violin Concerto up there in the top 5 to 10. It is up there with the Beethoven Violin Concerto, with the Brahms Violin Concerto, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. Those are, and Sibelius are definitely up there as the top. I'm sure I've missed a few. Thomas Schubottom, who's on the chat right now, can fill me in. There's also the Paganini concertos, violin concertos that are wonderful and super technical and super virtuoso, but a lot of fun to listen to. There's Wieniawski, something like that, a Polish composer who has these beautiful romantic violin concertos as well. But so I think definitely Sibelius goes up there. With the Brahms, Beethoven, Mendelssohn, Tchaikovsky, right? So that's 5. And then you'd round out the 10 with I think the Paganini. Oh, the Dvorak is the cello concerto. The violin concerto is good, but the cello concerto is a really good one. Wieniawski, yes, Rob, that's it. That's the guy. His violin concertos, he's got 2, I think. And they're spectacular. They're beautiful, romantic, melodic, gorgeous. Am I missing any important violin concerto? There are fewer violin concerto. Barber and Elgar, both good. Not up there with the Sibelius and the Beethoven and the Brahms, but good. All right. You can ask me about trios and other classical music, but make sure that Thomas is on the chat during that show so he can straighten me out when I screw it up, right? Bach. I'm not a big Bach fan. What can I say? The Bach that I like is the romanticized Bach of the 19th century, where they, in a sense, play him like they play him not like Bach is supposed to be played, but like the Romantics want to be played. Oh, Saint-Saëns. Thank you, Charlie. That's right. The Saint-Saëns violin concerto is beautiful. So yes, that is definitely one I would add. Adam says that Wieniawski that I couldn't pronounce is actually Wieniawski, something like that. Anyway, don't ever count on my pronouncing any of these names correctly in any language ever, because I'm terrible at it, and you should have found out. You should have known by that. Thomas says the Strauss concerto is nice. That's Richard Strauss. I think that's more of his in more of his romantic period. Thomas says you pronounce it Wieniawski. Wieniawski. Everybody's got their own interpretation. I don't really care. You get the picture, right? Go find it. It's spelled with a W-I-E-N. Start with that, and you'll find him. Wow. All right. G is silent, Stephanie says. All right. Let's see. All right. So just a reminder to everybody that I do answer questions on the Super Chat. Thank you, Robert, for getting us started. I appreciate that. So we try to raise $650 a show. That is our goal. I don't think Catherine is here today to kind of get you going and excited about achieving the goal. So hopefully we'll be able to raise the money without her. So feel free to jump in with questions on the topic would be great. On any topic would be great as well. So just feel free to cover whatever you want. We usually get very robust questions and very robust Q&As. So feel free to jump in with your Super Chat questions at any time. And as you know, you can also support the show by on Patreon, on Subscribestar, and on the Iran Book Show. Well, let's stick with Patreon Subscribestar right now, because my website, the support there is only limited at $10 a month, and I'd rather give you options to support me at higher levels. So Patreon is probably the best play, right? Patreon, Iran Book Show on Patreon is probably the best place to support the show right now on a monthly basis, and that's the basis that is most rewarding for the show, because it's predictable, I can plan for it, it's knowable. All right, if you guys would like to help the show right now, you can do two things. You can like the show, press the like button, and you can go over to Facebook or Twitter or wherever and just let the world know that you're watching the show right now live. So you can basically press the share button and go to Twitter and let the world know that I'm on live, and hopefully some of them will come on over and learn a little bit. I've actually got a PowerPoint presentation for you on Russia. So I think everybody's going to learn a lot from this, and it's going to be fun. Now, it's not a PowerPoint presentation I prepared. It's a PowerPoint presentation prepared by the Yale School of Management, their Chief Executive Leadership Institute, where they, I think, do seminars for CEOs, American CEOs, or international CEOs for that matter. Somebody sent me this presentation. I'm usually skeptical about these kind of things, but this one is actually really good, and I thought it was really, and it makes some really interesting points, and I thought we would cover it. The context for this is really the fact, by the way, this presentation is based on a working paper, a paper that you can find online, and on the SSRN website. It's called Business Retreats and Sanctions Are Crippling the Russian Economy. But I thought the nice thing about this is not just the conclusion is the right conclusion, but the nice thing about this is that it's interesting. That is, they bring up what I think are legitimate, interesting points about the Russian economy that make its weaknesses obvious. And what's really interesting about this is that this is on the background of the pro-Russian propaganda machine, and the pro-Russian conservatives, and I guess on the left and on the right, they are pro-Russians. The pro-Russians in America who are adamant about, oh, no, the Russian economy is doing great, the ruble is holding up, and indeed many isolationist conservatives who believe this is a great model to show that we can onshore the supply chain, we can produce at home, we don't need trade, trade is negative sum, trade is bad. This is the Donald Trump theory of globalization, of trade and everything else. So this is a real, at least for now, refutation of that. We'll have to monitor the Russian economy and see how it does in the next few years. This is a good beginning. All right, so let me put that up on the screen for you. So this is the presentation. We're going to go over these 8 different topics. We're going to start with the fact that basically all the optimistic claims out there. Emmanuel, thank you. That is very generous of you. Emmanuel says that he is currently drunk at a dive bar. He just raised $3 million. Apparently, finance isn't awful. That's fantastic. You know, I expect many more contributions like this in the minutes to come, given that you're drunk. I mean, this is the opportunity, right, that I have. But thank you, $100 from Emmanuel. And more importantly than thank you, even more importantly than thank you, congratulations. That's terrific that you've raised the money. I don't even know what the venture is, but $3 million, not easy to raise, so good for you. Congrats. All right, so this is like all the stuff that people are using to present optimistic data, so stats. So the first point to make is, if things are so good in Russia, why are the Russians withholding all this information? They're holding foreign trade data, export data, import data, oil and gas monthly output data, capital inflows and outflows. These are all data that was available from the Russian regime before the invasion, before sanctions. Financial statement of major companies, central bank monetary base data, foreign direct investment data, airline and airport passenger volumes, lending and loan origination data. All that data is missing. So one of the interesting things about this report is they have tried to recreate this data from other sources, which is interesting, and you know, at least from what I understand, seems like it's quite robust. You know, on top of all the fact that there's data missing, Putin has been intervening with the central bank, has been intervening with the statistical entity that produces economic data in Russia, has been firing people, kicking people out. In other words, clearly intervening in the production and distribution of data because the data doesn't fit his rhetoric, which is we're doing great in Russia. There's a lot of data that extrapolates in the first couple of months from what happened in Russia and extrapolates to today when we have information about what's happening, relatively, you know, good information about what's happening right now. There's no reason to. You can see at the bottom of the graph here, let's push this up so you can see that. You can see that things were, March, for example, monthly oil revenue was that high. In May, it was that low. Why are they extrapolating off of March instead of extrapolating off of May? So the optimists, the people who want to present Russia as a success story in spite of the war, a success story in spite of sanctions, are making stuff up. And they're using fake stats, they're buying into propaganda, and they're extrapolating for the first few weeks of the war to what's going on right now, and there's been big changes since then. So let's actually look at Russia as a commodity exporter and what that means. And this is I think, some of the more interesting stuff that this report has to present, right? And this is what Russia exports. Russia is a commodity export. It digs stuff out of the ground and it sells it globally. It produces gas and oil. Those are the dominant, and coal. Those are the dominant forms of natural resources that they export. Nickel, silver, aluminum, rye. This is agricultural. oats, copper, corn, cobalt, iron ore, zinc, and so on, right? This is their share globally. So they have 10% of gas and oil. It's 10%. It's not like the whole world is dependent on Russian gas and oil, and we'll get to Europe in a minute. And yet, so the world, if you look at the world, if you look at, I don't know, silver, yeah, it's 4%. 4% is a lot, but it's not like the world's going to collapse because Russia doesn't export 4% of the world's silver to the world. But the fact is that 60% of all energy, of all revenue to the Russian government, 60% of all revenue to the Russian government comes from energy, from gas and oil. I mean, 60%. So the Russian economy is totally dependent on Russia's ability to export oil and gas. The rest of the world, if Russia went away, yeah, we would take a hit. Prices gone up. They've already gone up. Yeah, we wouldn't collapse. Russia would collapse. And this is part of this myth. The Russian economy is fundamentally weak. The Russian economy is fundamentally vulnerable. Not because of the war, but because since the fall of the Soviet Union, under Putin, under this great president, Putin, Russia has not developed tech, has not developed, even though it has a lot of smart people. It's not developed tech, it's not developed its industry. It's focused all its resources and all its energy, on producing oil and gas and, you know, mining for metals and some agriculture. Right? So the Russian economy before the war was a pathetic, ridiculous, failed economy. Post-war, it is basically on the brink of collapse. Now let's look at natural gas in Europe. Who's more dependent on whom? Because we hear all the time about, oh, the panic in Europe, what is going to happen? What are we going to do? You know, people are going to die of cold when the winter comes and there's no gas. And it's true, you know, there's a real panic right now in Europe. There's a real problem right now in Europe. But what you're not hearing is the panic in Russia. What happens if Europe stops or reduces the amount of natural gas they import from Russia? Russia gets a huge percentage of its government spending from exporting natural gas. Russia exports 83% of its natural gas to Europe. If Europe stops importing natural gas, Russia does not then have the ability to shift that natural gas and export it to China. The pipelines are not built. The infrastructure is not there. Russia cannot shift to LNG and start shipping natural gas to other countries. Russia has no way to replace Russia has no way to replace the revenue from European natural gas. There's no other source where they can get that kind of money. So if indeed natural gas is cut off from Europe, or if Europe reduces its dependency and slowly eliminates natural gas from Russia, Russia is screwed. The Russian economy is screwed. Now you can see that Europe has more diversified sources of natural gas than one would believe, one would think based on media representation. For example, Russia provides 46% of natural gas, but the United States and others have provided 19%. Norway, which is has the most natural gas outside of Russia in Europe, provides 25% of the EU's natural gas. Algeria, Qatar, and they are running around the world right now, the Europeans, cutting deals with all kinds of countries. Israel is going to be starting sending through Egypt, through the LNG port in Egypt, natural gas to to Europe. I think the United Arab Emirates is going to start increasing its natural gas export to Europe. So Europe actually has ways to diversify and to increase the amount of natural gas it gets. Russia has no way to replace the revenue from Europe. Just look at this, this chart here. Let me get it higher up so you can see June of 2022. June of this year, US LNG exports to Europe actually were higher than the amount of gas that was pumped by Russia into the European Union. So US already is exporting more gas than is into Europe than is to Russia. Now, granted, that was, I think, when the pipeline was shut down for repair and stuff like that. Anyway, this is really, really cool. I mean, these stats are really interesting, and I like the title here. When it comes to natural gas, Russia far more dependent on Europe than vice versa. And this, by the way, is true of countries like Saudi Arabia, far more dependent on the United States than we are on them. They only have one resource, oil. They have no military, they have no meaningful military, they have nothing. Troy beat him from Australia. Thank you for the 500 Australian dollars. That is incredibly generous. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And Emmanuel has come in with another $100. So, you know, that alcohol is working on him. So thank you. So we're pretty close to 650, our goal of 650. So we're only $77 away from our goal, which is nice. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is a map of the gas pipelines flowing into Europe. You can see the blue in the middle is Ukraine. You can see that many of the pipelines are going through Ukraine. You can also see that there's an alternative pipeline coming in from Baku. Baku is in Azerbaijan that goes to southern Europe. That is an alternative path, and from Turkey into southern Europe. That's an alternative path for natural gas. The challenge the Europeans have is to get the natural gas from southern Europe into Germany, into central Europe. Notice that none of the pipelines go to France and Spain. France is basically nuclear. I'm not sure what Spain uses, but obviously not natural gas from Russia. So the dependency of natural gas is almost totally Central European, primarily Germany, Czech Republic, and countries like that. So this is a fascinating map. You can see all the pipelines that were built during the Soviet era when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Most of the pipelines flow through Ukraine. It's easy terrain. And then you've got the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 at the top there that go under the Baltic Sea. And Nord Stream 2 is not operational yet. And Nord Stream 1 is the one, it's the most robust one. It goes right to Germany. It is not being at full capacity for a variety of different reasons over the last few months. But you can see how, Russia's pipelines all going to Europe, all going to Central Europe, many very, very susceptible to, for example, Ukraine shutting them off. Russia not in a great strategic position given all these pipelines. Let's see. This is not fungible. They can't just take that gas and instead of giving it to Europe, take it to China. They don't have the pipelines. Now, they're building pipelines. The pipelines will get there at some point. They're building it, but ain't there yet. So you can see there's a couple of Siberian pipelines that are targeted at China, but it's going to be a while before those pipelines can replace anywhere near what is right now being shipped to the West, and there's no connection between these the whatever's being built and between the East and pipelines. So, bunch of new infrastructure, huge amounts of huge dollar amounts, massive amounts of money have to be spent here. Adam, we're going to get to that. That's actually in one of the slides that we're going to get to. So while Russia would like to pivot to the east, would like to pivot to Asia, to China, to India, right now, it sends 170 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Europe and 16.5, so 10% to China, and that's not going to change. That's not going to improve much. All right, if we move to oil, Russia produces about 12% of the global share of oil. The rest of the world is 88%. But most of that is to Europe. 52% of that oil is to Europe, 39% to Asia, and 8% to other, including the United States historically, right? For a variety of reasons, we've imported oil from Russia. But if you look at long-term where oil production in Russia is going, it's all in decline. They don't have the technology to beef up production of oil. Oil is declining at a steady rate year in, year out. They would have to make massive investment in technology in order to increase production. The Russians don't have the capital. They don't have the investment capital. And now that Western oil companies have withdrawn from Russia because of the sanctions, there's just no way the Russians can catch up. And actually, this is what happened to Venezuela. Venezuela, that has the largest oil reserves in the world, can't produce that oil because they don't have the technology and they don't have the capital to do it. They've kicked out Western oil companies, the people who have the technology to get to that oil. They can't get at it. So, good luck with all the oil reserves when you have no access to them. They're actually worth exactly zero when you have no access to them. Now, China is buying more oil. Oil is shipped on ships. But China and India is also buying a lot of Russian oil. They're getting a huge discount. So there is right now a $35 discount per barrel on every barrel of Russian oil sold to China or to India. So the Indians and Chinese are saying, okay, we'll pick up some of the slack. You can see China's increased significantly. We'll pick up some of the slack from the fact that you can't sell to Europe, that Europe is boycotting your oil, and America is boycotting your oil. But we want a discount. We want a discount. And they're getting it. So this hurts Russian government revenues significantly. So if you look at travel time and the cost that implies, you can see just the crash here. This is Euro Brent discount reflects how invasion of Ukraine reversed 2 decades worth of economic progress for Russia. So you can see how the discount has just happened now, right? It's just because of the war. Before that, there was no discount on Russian oil. They were selling it at market prices. All right, let's shift away from natural resources and look at imports. This is what's happening to imports, right? Major trading partners indicated Russian imports fell significantly. So Russia's not disclosing import numbers. So the only way to get these numbers is by looking at all the Russian trading partners and seeing how much they're exporting to Russia. But look what happened to imports. Collapsed, crashed. Now this is huge because in spite of the mythology that some people like Trump and others pretended, our standard of living is raised through imports. We're trading with the rest of the world. When we have robust imports, it means we have capital to trade with the rest of the world and to get their stuff, and enhances our quality and standard of living. You can see that China has reduced, counter to the idea that China is helping out Russia. China has reduced exports to Russia significantly because the Russians don't have the money to pay for it. So you can only import if you can pay for it. To pay for it, you have to pay for it in a currency that your trading partner will accept. The Chinese accept dollars, they'll accept yuans, they'll accept probably euros, and they'll accept Japanese yen. They don't have much use for the ruble. So the Chinese are selling a lot less stuff to Russia because Russia doesn't have the money to buy it. And this is a great sign of the actual decline in economic activity in Russia since the war began. Just a collapse in imports, which suggests a collapse in the Russian economy. This is an example of where do Russian imports come from, primarily from China. You saw that collapse that's happened in China. Germany, of course, we know that with sanctions, Germany is selling a lot less, and all these countries are selling a lot less into Russia. Where do Chinese exports go? So China is crucial to Russia. Russia is not crucial to China. China doesn't export much to Russia, sorry. China doesn't export much to Russia. Russia imports a lot relative to everything else that it imports. But for China, it's a blimp. It's insignificant. It doesn't really matter. And you can see it's number 11 on the chart of where Chinese exports actually go. Number 1 is the United States, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea. Russia is number 11. All right, we want to look a little bit at some Chinese data. At Russian data. Official Russian Consumer Price Index, CPI, which we're complaining now is at 9% in the United States, and everybody's horrified. Well, in Russia, it's over 20%. And that's the official number. It's probably significantly higher when you take into account what's happening in the actual economy. These are the sectors. You can see that technology has gone through the roof in terms of costs. Technology is up over 60%. Hospitality services are up over 60%. Autos, electric appliances. If you look at retail sales in Russia, they are plummeted, so Russians don't have the money to go out shopping. There's also not a lot to buy because imports have crashed. So there's not anything for them to buy if they go to the shops. Shops are empty. Shelves are empty shelves. If we look at car sales again have collapsed since February, certainly since June of 2021. You can see how dramatic the collapse is from 180,000 units in June of 2021, and as late as February 2022, about 120 or 120, and now 27,000 actual cars selling in a month, 2776, so almost 28,000. And then if you look at by brand, you can see Lexus has disappeared, Volvo has disappeared, basically crashing 100%. What's left is, some, I guess, Russian cars, right? Not exactly. What about import substitution? So some Russians, like somebody like Dugin, were all excited because, hey, imports will stop. We'll have to produce ourselves. Isn't that cool? It'll force manufacturers to bring manufacturing home. It's called, it's called import substitution. We'll build it all at home. To build it at home, you have to have capital to invest. To build it at home, you have to have technical expertise. You have to have the ability to produce. You have to have workers who are skilled. If the skills don't exist, you can't build at home. If the technological knowledge on how to build the stuff doesn't exist, you can't build at home. If the capital doesn't exist, you can't build at home. So if you look at the import substitution, it's, for parts and accessories for motor vehicles, negative 54% in May, motor vehicles negative 75. So no, it hasn't filled up. It hasn't made up for the gap at all. And by the way, Putin has been talking about import substitution for years, really since the first Crimean invasion in 2014. He keeps talking about it. He keeps chiding the Russian, I don't know who, Department for Industrial Planning or whatever it is, for not getting the import substitution up and running. And you can see that in every field, they are way, they just aren't catching up. They can't replace the imports. They're still heavily dependent on importation, primarily from China, but also from places like Germany. This is domestic industry production volume that has decreased. So the industries in Russia have decreased production. Why? Because they need raw materials from overseas. because they need spare parts from overseas. And by the way, this is true of the military. They can't build T-72s because a lot of the stuff there they import from overseas. They can't build new military equipment because military equipment requires chips, microprocessors. They import that. Where are they going to get the chips? So, by no standards can the Russian economy replace the lost imports. The lost imports are lost. Again, these are surveys in terms of economic anxieties, new orders, new export orders. Everything is crashing. Everything is plummeting across the board, plummeting down. All right, let's look at businesses. Over 1,000 global businesses have left Russia. That represents 40% of Russia's GDP, and over 5 million jobs that have left Russia. If you look at, the capital outflows, massive amount of outflows, leaving Russia. If you got money in Russia, you try to get it out to Monte Carlo, to Cyprus, to any place you can to get it out of Russia, out of the hands of the government, out of the reach of the Russian government that at some point is going to get desperate and confiscate your funds. See massive outflows of Russians. Here, you can also see, importantly, massive outflow of talent. Now, the outflow of talent is not going to immediately affect your economic success, although it does at the margin. But long-term, devastating. According to this estimate, over 500,000 Russians have left Russia since the war began. 500,000. 50% of the 500,000, so we're talking about 250,000, are highly educated or work in skilled sectors such as tech. How are you going to onshore industries if your most talented workers are leaving? 15,000 ultra-high net worth individuals have fled Russia. I didn't know Russia had 15,000 ultra-high net worth individuals. 20% of all Russians whose net worth is over 30 million, 20% of them have left Russia. And of course, when they leave Russia, they take their money with them. I don't know how you ever recover from that unless these people come back, and how do you create an incentive for them to ever come back? And once they get established other places, once these highly skilled individuals have jobs in other places, again, what a missed opportunity for the United States, and maybe for most of Western Europe. What a missed opportunity where you could be saying right now, the United States has a massive labor shortage. What if the United States right now said, if you're Russian, we'll give you a visa, we'll give you a green card. If you, let's say you just want tech people. I would give it to everybody, but if you just want tech people. If you're in tech, we'll give you a green card right now, today. Just come to an embassy anywhere in the world, we'll stamp a green card and you come on in. What a missed opportunity. We missed it in Hong Kong. We're missing it with Russia. We're missing it with, maybe there's a reason not to do that with Ukraine. Generally, we should do that with everybody, not just Russians. We should do it with the whole world. But how do you recover once these people get jobs in the West? They're not going to go back. It's done. It's finished. Wait. The ruble. Everybody talks about, oh my God, the ruble is still strong. This is proof that the Russian economy is doing well. The currency is strong. Well, of course it's strong because they're not allowing anybody to sell it. So they've got these massive capital controls. They ban citizens from sending money to bank accounts abroad, which means to convert it into dollars or euros and send it abroad. They suspended cash withdrawals from dollar banking accounts beyond $10,000. So they can't take dollars out of the country. They forced exports to exchange 80% of earnings to rubles, so nobody can hold dollars. So you have to use the dollars to buy the ruble, which holds it up. They've suspended lending in dollars. They've suspended dollar sales across Russian banks. They've encouraged individuals to redeem dollars for rubles, and companies must pay foreign dollar debt in rubles. So, of course, you can see here the graph on top is liquidity in the ruble market. There's no liquidity. Nobody can actually sell dollars. Nobody can actually sell rubles. They can only buy rubles with dollars. That keeps it up. This is Econ 101. Sure, you can keep your currency at a high value artificially through capital controls. Countries try and do this for a while, over and over and over again in the world. And the more capital controls you have, the more control the government has over the exchange rate. And what happens in places like this, and I'm sure this is happening right now in Russia, is that there is a vast, what do you call it? Vast black market all over Russia where people are exchanging rubles for dollar, not at the official exchange rate. Not at the official exchange rate. So this always happens. All right, and then on top of that, the government is providing massive both physical and monetary stimuluses to the economy, which are unsustainable and create all the distortions we know that physical and monetary stimulus creates. The Kremlin is inundating the marketplace with artificial liquidity, this both at the federal and at the regional level. And finally, Russia's foreign exchange reserves, as you could imagine, are being depleted because people are taking dollars and euros and yuan out of the country. They don't want them in Russia. They're taking them out of the country. And they don't want rubles. And all the rainy day funds that they've accumulated over the years from energy prices being high and everything are gone. And remember, they're not benefiting from high energy prices right now because they're giving a discount to anybody who buys their stuff. Financial markets, look at the stock market in Russia. It has collapsed by nearly 50%. And you can see that while on the day of the war it collapsed and then immediately rebounded, since then it's drifted downwards and it's back to its worth, close to where it was on that first day of the war when it collapsed from 4,300 to close to 2,000. There've been no equity issuances since the war started. There've been no debt issuances, bond issuances since the war started. And they've had one sovereign debt, Russian debt default during that period. If you look at the oil giants, you'd think that they'd be benefiting from the fact that oil prices are so high. No, Rosenfeld, this is the gas company, its stock has crashed. If you look at Gazprom, the oil company, its stock has crashed. Nobody is benefiting in Russia from anything that's going on in the global markets right now. Credit is not flowing to small and medium-sized businesses. There's a massive credit crunch. In other words, and I'll end this here, in other words, the Russian economy is a basket case. It is crashing. Standard of living, quality of life is being decimated. And don't believe the stories out there. Don't believe the Russian propaganda. Don't believe the apologists for Putin. The reality is, the fact is that Russia is suffering dramatically from this war. We're not even talking about the number of people that have been killed, the number of Russian soldiers who have died, the amount of military equipment that has been destroyed is truly unbelievable. This war, Putin's war, will go down as one of the greatest strategic blunders in Western history. This will go down in European history. This will go one of the biggest blunders. This is Russian economy was never strong. Again, Putin has not grown the economy significantly since he took power 20 years ago, and now it's just being devastated. So beware propaganda, both from American sources and, of course, from Russian sources as well. All right. Let's see. What do we want to do now? I'm going to talk about, are we in recession in a minute. Let me do a couple of $50 super chat questions, and then we'll do are we in recession, and then Orban at CPAC, and then we'll do some more. All right, so Phil, let's start with Phil. Same Phil as before. Hey, Phil. Hi, Iran. Thanks for your insights and work. I've been reading Judgment in Moscow by Vladimir Bukovsky, the dissident. If this was a fiction book, people would probably say it's far-reaching. Manipulation of Europe, Greens, and useful idiots. Yes, I'm not surprised. I mean, Putin is, like most demagogues and authoritarians, is very good at manipulation, very good at marketing, very good at manipulating his enemies, particularly when the enemies are weak, like the Western world is. Not weak militarily, not weak financially, not weak economically, but weak philosophically, intellectually, and weak from a self-esteem and confidence perspective. And as a consequence, Russia has, for many years, been funding green movement people in Europe to undermine European security and European production. I wouldn't be surprised if we discovered that Putin has been funding right-wing organizations in the United States. We don't know yet of, I think, the full scope of Putin in the United States. We do know that they run an extensive propaganda machine in the U.S. They have a very sophisticated propaganda machine that they have run and still, I believe, run on Facebook, on Twitter, on social media. But also, I think they're paying off, or in one way or another, they're paying off thinkers, intellectuals, and political activists in the U.S. who are promoting the Russian line. I think some people are doing it innocently because they believe Russia is on our side, just like they think Orban is on our side. I think conservatives believe this, and some of them are committed to it for a variety of reasons because they believe in kind of the Dugin agenda that we talked about the other day. But some of them are patsies and some of them are paid. So yes, I think that Russia has this unbelievably successful and well-funded propaganda machine that is very, very, very powerful in the world. Scott mentions blackmail. I'm sure they're using blackmail across the board. I mean, there was a story. So I was told, and I think John Allison also did a trip to Russia, and when he was president of Cato, I think, or before that, I can't remember exactly. But he was told, don't take a cell phone to Russia, or buy a cell phone just for your trip to Russia, because they will put something on. They will get your cell phone, they will access it, they will put malware in your cell phone, they will steal your data, and they will keep it on there for when you come back. Now, when I was there, I didn't do that, so who knows? The Russians might be on my phone. But I have to say, of all the countries that I visited in the world, and I visited a lot of countries, somewhere between 70 to 100 countries in the world, real countries, not counting Scotland as a different country. No, real countries. I've visited about 70 to 80, I think, real countries. The country where I felt the most afraid, worried, tentative was Russia, more than in China. And in China, at least on one occasion, probably more, the secret police who were following one of the guys I was with were pointed out to me. And yet Russia was scarier. Russia was scarier. So it's a disaster. It's a truly horrible place. And the idea that American conservatives thinks that Putin and Russia are allies, and that Jordan Peterson thinks they're on our side, on the good guy's side in the civilizational battle. God. Not even God can save us in that one. All right, Ashton asks, don't you think it's hard to trust any news source when it comes to covering war? News like that mostly ends up just as propaganda due to the fact that journalists having an ideological bias. Yeah, absolutely. You have to be very diligent. You have to be very careful. You have to be very tentative in terms of what you think about war, and you have to find reliable sources. Look, I grew up in a country that was constantly at war. I actually fought in a war, so I knew what was going on in the front much better than what the news was saying, and the news was censored by the Israeli censors. At a time of war, you couldn't really tell in the newspaper what was going on. I lived through at least the 1973 war when I was in my early teens, And so I was on the civilian side in that war. I've covered many wars, from the Iraq War to the Afghanistan War to the original Iraq War in the early 90s. So I've monitored, I've paid attention to lots and lots and lots of wars. And yes, everything's biased, and you have to develop a skill and the ability to figure out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, who's reliable and who's not. And partially you do that by who was right and who was wrong. So for example, in the first few days of the Ukrainian war, if you went on Twitter and you discovered certain accounts, you discovered that these accounts were documenting the destruction of Russian tanks en masse, significant success, Ukrainian success stories, just massive errors and mistakes, logistic problems and everything on the Russian side, and an indication that they were probably not going to take Kiev and that this was going to be a very long, and you got certain accounts that providing this, and it turned out all to be true. How do we know it turned out all to be true? Because unequivocally, Russia withdrew from northern Ukraine. It withdrew from that entire region because it was losing. So, okay, so there's some sources that seem to know what they're doing. You get certain sources. I like, for example, the Institute for the Study of War, that are, you could argue they're biased, they're not biased, but they provide maps, they provide detailed reporting on both sides. When the Russians seem to be advancing, they report on that. When the Ukrainians seem to be making gains, they report on that. They seem to have a balanced thing. A lot of it is based on satellite images. You can't fake satellite images. So the Institute for the Study of War, I follow them on Twitter, and I think they give a good approach. I also listen to the UK intelligence UK Defense Department has a regular briefing on Ukraine. So far, their briefings have been pretty accurate in terms of what's ultimately happened in the war. So in the world in which we live, while it's difficult sometimes to screen out the propaganda from the not, it's also, you have more access to more information about the war than you ever have before. So there is a true opportunity right now to actually get multiple sources from multiple places and to actually engage with those sources and figure out which ones are right or figure out which ones are wrong, depending on what actually happens on the ground. And ultimately you discover what happens on the ground, maybe not immediately, but ultimately. And you can figure out who are the good guys and who's reporting accurately and who's not. So so far, I have managed to get really good, objective, accurate reporting on the situation on the front. And I know that because of what actually happens on the front. Again, unless it's all fictition, it's all made up, which I don't think is possible to maintain that kind of fiction, you ultimately discover who's BSing you and who's not. Right? Alan Bibelbach says that the Austrian Ministry of Defense gives good, fairly objective briefings about the war. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think there's just too much good intelligence out there, particularly with satellites, for any of the journalists to fake it. And the only people who are massively faking it right now are the Russians. I mean, they had the story about the Ukrainians killing their own POWs. And people did an analysis of the satellite images, and it was clear from the satellite images that the explosion happened from within the building, not from outside the building. So the Russians killed them with a bomb that exploded inside the building. All this is, you can figure it out. People can figure it out. The data is all there. That's amazing, which is truly amazing. Yeah, I'll just, I'm going to keep these other questions for later because otherwise we're going to run way too late. I might skip the Orban at CPAC. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Are we in a recession? This is going to be, I think, fairly quick. But there's a big discussion right now. Is the United States in recession? Isn't it? Economists are fighting. The Biden administration, of course, is claiming, no, we're not. And anyway, if anybody's going to declare recession, it has to be the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, because traditionally they do it, but they do it months later, so what help is that? But other economists are saying, wait. Usually two quarters of negative GDP growth signal a recession. So we're in a recession right now, and we should declare a recession. And of course, this is all partisan. The left wants you to think that there's no recession because they don't want you to think the economy is doing badly. The right wants you to think that the economy is a lot worse than it really is because they want to gain your vote in the midterm election. So this is completely political. Because the fact is that who cares? Are we in a recession? Probably not. If we are, we're in a very, very mild recession. It's almost never the case that we're in a recession and manufacturing production is actually going up. It's almost never the case that we're in a recession and unemployment is as low as it is right now, and we're not seeing it rise. I think we're heading towards a recession. I think all the signals are pointing towards things getting worse, the economy getting worse. I just don't think we're probably in one right now. We're probably heading towards. There's a good article by one of my favorite economists these days, Scott Lincecum, on this, and it basically is recessions. We're wasting time fighting about definitions instead of working for solutions. He's absolutely right. We've got a recession. The recession is being caused by constraints on supply, which means by regulation. The recession is caused by too much government spending, which is increasing inflation expectations. Inflation is going to be caused by the stupid bill that Manchin has agreed to, which they're calling, what is the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's actually going to be an Inflation Increasing Act because all the spending is front-loaded. All the spending happens right now. The taxes come later. You could argue that raising taxes reduces inflation, maybe, but not if you increase taxes in the future and you spend right now, so it has no impact. No, it has an impact. It increases inflation because it increases the amount of spending in the economy. GDP generally, they talk about 2 negative quarters of GDP. GDP numbers are not very good numbers. They overestimate things like the difference between imports and exports in a kind of, I don't think in a helpful way. The way it calculates government spending, so-called government investment, all of that is fakery. So GDP are not good numbers to estimate economic growth. The fact is that the economy is still doing fairly well when it comes to employment, when it comes to production, when it comes to job creation. The economy is doing fairly well, but all of those things are slowing, and there's significant indications that things are going to get worse. I'd also say that there's significant reason to believe that inflation is not going to get better, or if it gets better, it's not sustainable. That is, the Fed is being too timid, and until the government gives some kind of indication that is interested and committed to reducing government deficits, inflation expectations, I think, will remain relatively high. So this Inflation Reduction Act, which hopefully Senator will kill, Senator Sinema from Arizona will kill, is a disaster and terrible for inflation. So is the CHIP Act. The CHIP Act, 79 billion semiconductor subsidies, don't do good for production in the United States, don't do good for allocation of capital in the United States, and only increase government spending and therefore increase inflationary pressures ultimately. So instead, what the government should be doing at the federal level is cutting spending. What they should be doing is dramatically reducing regulation. What they should be doing is basically encouraging supply, encouraging manufacturing, encouraging trade, encouraging global trade and trade within the United States. They should be getting out of the way of consumers and producers. That's how you reduce the probability of a recession. And at the end of the day, recessions matter. What really matters is not the definition of recession. What really matters is standard of living and quality of life. Is standard of living and quality of life going up or down? And with inflation right now, quality of life is going down. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. So standard of living is going down. And standard of living going down, that's what matters. And that's not going to be captured by the numbers. All right. If you have any questions on are we in a recession or not, feel free to use the super chat. All right, let's do a couple of super chats, and then we'll do Orban, and then we'll call it a night. All right, just to give you a sense, I'll put it in the chat. We're at $730 of super chats, a fantastic super chat night. So thank you, everybody. All right, let's. Thomas asks, have you heard of the recent book Stalin's War and New History of World War II by Sean McKean? It places the locus for causing World War II in Stalin as much as Hitler. I just bought it, planning to read. It sounds fascinating, and look, people forget this, or maybe they never knew because we don't teach history, but World War II officially started when two countries invaded Poland. Two countries invaded Poland. Two. Germany and Russia. And that happened on the same day, at the same time, in a coordinated effort between Stalin and Hitler. Stalin and Hitler invaded Poland. Second World War is as much, the beginning of it at least, is as much Stalin's fault as it is Hitler's fault. So I'm glad to see a book that shows that. I'm curious on how the book is going to deal with the Soviet Union beat the Germans. So it'll be interesting to see how it deals with that, and to what extent it deals with the help the United States gave them, and what would have happened if the U.S. hadn't supplied that help. So yeah, let me know, Thomas, what you think of the book, if it's good. I'm definitely interested in that history, because one of the things Putin has done is he has rewritten history to a large extent and made Stalin the hero of World War II, and made the Soviet Union, Russia, the Soviet Union, the main cause for Hitler's demise is the Soviet Union, according to Putin. So he's rewriting history, and it'd be great to see some history books debunk that idea, because I don't think it's true. Okay, friend Harper's been patient with this question for a long time, but it wasn't on topic, so. But thank you for the $20. Is it moral for objectivist public intellectuals to have friendly chats with Prager or Peterson? Is that not an endorsement by showing their opinions respect? Asking for my friends, since I don't have any of my own at the moment. You don't have any questions or any friends at the moment? So I think it depends. I think it depends. It's a good question. It's a question that I and people at the Institute struggle with often, you know, it's something that we think about all the time. It's something that I think we make mistakes about all the time. It's something that we try to learn from our mistakes. It's not something that's self-evident. There's no formula. You plug in the variables and boom, this guy you can talk to and this guy you can't. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the person. It depends who you're putting up against him. It depends on the topic. It depends if it's a debate or a discussion. It depends how friendly or unfriendly it is. I think generally to go on somebody like Prager and Peterson and not express disagreement is a massive mistake. To be overly friendly is a mistake. I think this is particularly the case with Prager, where he pretends like we're his friends. He pretends like we are allies in the cause for liberty, not to say something about the fact that he is undermining the cause of liberty through his explicit advocacy of religion is really problematic in my view. Peterson is a little trickier, because the disagreements with Peterson are less about he's an advocate for capitalism. He's not really. He's not known for that. It's more about he's got interesting epistemology and an interesting point of view that sounds like self-help and sounds a little bit consistent with the virtues, but it's not. So I don't think many people out there think of objectivists and Jordan Peterson as allies, the way many people think. And certainly Prager thinks of us and Prager as allies. So there's less need to differentiate because the differentiation will come out from just the discussion. You're not going to agree on anything with Jordan Peterson. There's just no, I mean, except the attack on the left. But anytime positive values are going to come up, you're going to disagree. And it's important you express that disagreement. I thought the time when Peterson was at Ocon did not go as well as I would have liked because we didn't expose the disagreements sharply enough. And if I ever had an opportunity to be with Peterson on stage again, I would make clear to make our disagreements with him sharper and more explicit. But I think Peterson is a legit public intellectual. He's wrong, but so is almost every public intellectual out there. I'm not going to not go on stage with public intellectuals. So it really is a question of the people the two kinds of people you want to avoid. The people that everybody's going to think you're in agreement with them on most things when you're not, and you don't have the opportunity to express the disagreement. And the second is people who are just beyond the pale. Racists, communists, people who are real apologists for communism. They're like, what's his name? God, I can see his face. Anyway, like the extreme left or the extreme right that are super bad would be bad. I would talk to Patrick Deneen, absolutely. I mean, the disagreement would be obvious, would be clear, would be, and we'd have a debate, and that's great. Now, I don't think Patrick Deneen would ever debate me, but I wouldn't debate Chomsky. Richard Wolff was a touch and go, but I thought given his popularity and given that he's, I think, a lightweight compared to Chomsky, it was worth debating him. I wouldn't debate Chomsky, but I debate Patrick Deneen. I'd debate any of the national conservatives or theocrats or any of those people. And I won't debate anarchists because of that confusion between us and them. So I'll debate anarchy on occasion, like I did with Malice. I'll debate anarchy. I debated anarchy with a guy in Poland. I'm not going to make it a habit, partially because I find the topic not that interesting and quite ugly. But I won't go to Praga unless I have an opportunity to really go after Praga and clearly, unequivocally, show the differences between us. I don't know. Wanda Freeman says, a good debate topic for you and David Deutsch would be education. I'm not an expert on education, though. But anything with regard to epistemology would be a conflict between me and David. I mean, that's the essential difference. The fundamental difference, I think, is an epistemological difference. I don't think it's a metaphysical difference, although there might be some metaphysical differences. But it's primarily epistemology. And the reality is that I don't know that David is an epistemologist in many respects. That's the core of what he holds. I'm not an expert in epistemology. It's not the core of what I do. And if I'm going to debate somebody on a topic that I'm not an expert in, that's a difficult one. So to debate David Deutsch, I'd like somebody like Greg Samleri or Onkar Gate or Harry Binswanger would be great at debating David Deutsch on epistemology. Not my area of expertise, unfortunately. Okay. Hopefully, friend Hopper, that gives you an indication. Again, I don't think that these decisions, who you talk to and who you don't, who you sanction and who you don't, who you endorse, who you don't, is when is it an endorsement or when is it a sanction or what's the difference between the two? I don't think those are easy topics. I think those are difficult topics that, at least at the Institute, we spend a lot of time really thinking about. I don't think anybody else does. I don't think any of the other objective-ish organizations out there think about this much at all. They go where the audience is, they go where the money is, they go where the prestige is. They don't care about sanctioning. They don't care about endorsing. They don't care about any of this. They give it no thought. So that's true of Atlas. That's Atlas Society. That's true of many others as well. Really, all the other objective-ish organizations out there. Yeah, I would never debate or get on a stage with Nick Fuentes. Because getting on a stage with somebody says, I think he's a legitimate person, legitimate intellectual that is worthy of debating. There is nothing worthy about debating Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is a scumbag. He is the lowest of the low, and I wouldn't, you know, if I saw him at a restaurant I was going to, I would walk around and leave. I don't want to be in the same room with him. I don't want to see, I mean, the same is true of many of these people. There's certain scumbags that I will not be on a stage with, even to debate. I wouldn't give them the dignity of debating them. Right? It's not like Marxism, which has adherents in the hundreds of millions of people, where you want to debate Marxists even you think it's a despicable ideology because it's so out there. Nick Fuentes, he has a bigger following than I do, but it's not hundreds of millions. It's not important. And anybody with half a brain, anybody with a tenth of a brain, should be able to see right through Nick Fuentes. He's so ugly that it should be obvious that he is a scumbag. All right, Scott, can you expand on your claim that last night that Lake and Masters win in Arizona, that Donald Trump will use them to steal the elections in the future? Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has basically said it, and he's so have many of the Republican Party. Basically, they tried to do that. The people who won in Arizona, I'm not even talking about Lake and Masters, but the other Republican nominees who won in Arizona, one of them to be in a position with regard to the election commission, they said they wanted to send alternative delegates to the, to hell with the vote, to hell with what Arizonians actually voted. We're going to decide the way the election should go, and we're going to say whatever delegates we want. That's stealing an election. And that's what Donald Trump wanted Arizona to do. He wanted Georgia to do it. He wanted Michigan to do it, which is unconstitutional, un-American, and that's exactly what he's advocated for. He is called for the election of the people in charge of the ballot boxes, people in charge of the election committees, to be people who all believe in that the election was stolen. He wants people who are pure partisans. God forbid he wants, like the guy in Georgia who told him over and over again, Trump, you lost in Georgia. A Republican, a conservative Republican, kept telling him you lost because the guy had integrity and he knew what the ballot boxes said. You lost in Georgia. He wants people that are yes men. He wants people to say, oh, you don't like the result? We'll flip it. I'll find you 20,000 votes. And that's exactly the kind of person Lake is. It's exactly the kind of people. I don't know about Masters. Masters is just a really, really bad sign for the country if Masters becomes a senator. I can tell you more about that when I do a show on Masters. But I'll give you an example. When Masters was asked who has influenced him the most, he said the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. Masters is a neo-Luddite in a weird, bizarre, crazy kind of way because he comes from Silicon Valley and has that kind of background. But he is very anti-tech, very return to the roots, very, very, very bad type of, like a Luddite types of conservatism. Yes, Thiel backed the Luddite, the same with J.D. Vance. But you can find the quote where Masters says that the person who influenced him most was the Unabomber Manifesto, the anti-modern society, anti-technological society, anti-progress, anti-modern Unabomber. That's who inspired Masters. You can go find it yourself. It's a very, very, he is a national conservative. Masters is a national conservative, as is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, if you remember, signed the National Conservative Statement of Principle. What's his name? Thiel was one of the signatories. J.D. Vance is a horrible, really, really bad human being who has flipped on a dime in order to gain power. I used to think he was a good guy, but the way he flipped on Trump and the way he flipped on his views about the world is disgusting. Look, Scott, there's no point in arguing with me about Thiel. I've met Thiel. I've spent a lot of time with Peter Thiel. I have, the Ayn Rand Institute has received significant money from Thiel. But the fact is that Thiel is a Trumpster. But more than that, Thiel now is the #1 supporter of national conservatism in the United States. He's the money behind national conservatism. And he signed the principles of national conservatism. Yoram Hazony, the guy I debated, who founded the national conservative movement to a large extent, is also an Ayn Rand fan. Lots of people are Ayn Rand fans. It might turn out that some real monsters are Ayn Rand fans. It doesn't matter. Being an Ayn Rand fan doesn't say anything. It's a question of what do you uphold? I have been to many talks in person where Peter Thiel has talked. I've seen him morph his positions to be anti-capitalist, anti-trade, and for big government intervention in the economy, and big on the cultural issues, which is interesting because Peter Thiel is gay, but is a Christian. He's Christian and gay, and now believes that Christianity should be a significant role in politics. What that'll do to his gay marriage, I'm not sure. Of course, Peter Thiel's anti-capitalist. I know you guys know him better than I do. If you've been to his house, you've talked to him, you've seen his talks, you follow him the way I do, but you know better than I do. Fine. He is very anti-capitalist, not a little bit even, very. Yeah, well, Trump liked the Fountainhead. I'm not sure Trump read the Fountainhead, but Trump says he liked the Fountainhead. Okay, quickly, here's another sign for you, right? CPAC. CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Committee. CPAC has run, I think I've told you this, has run conservative conferences since 1972. Is a major conservative event. These conferences. Well, the keynote speaker, other than Trump is the keynote speaker this week in Dallas. I think it's in Dallas, in Texas. But the second keynote speaker, the guy who opened the conference this morning, I think, was Viktor Orbán, the president of Hungary. Now, let's be clear on who Viktor Orbán is. Viktor Orbán is explicitly a Christian nationalist conservative. He believes that there should be no separation of state and economics. He believes in a kind of governance and a kind of conservatism where the president, in this case him, should be able to control the Supreme Court, should be able to control the media. There's almost no opposition media in Hungary. All of it has been shut down, and the ones that still exist have been taken over by Orban cronies. He's very popular in Hungary. He keeps winning elections, and there's no reason to believe that he's not winning them fair and square. But there's no alternative media. There's all the big industries in Hungary are run by his cronies. He is almost a fascist, not quite. The other day, at a talk in Romania, he said that one of the things that Europe needs to avoid is mixing of races. So he is an explicit racist, and he's anti-immigration. Remember, he built the wall to prevent the Muslims from coming in. Of course, the funny thing is that he presents himself as he saved Hungary. But the fact is that not a single one of those Muslims wanted to stay in Hungary. They all were going to Germany. So he actually saved Germany more than he saved Hungary. A majority of Hungarians support him, but he is a bad, bad, bad guy. And he is exactly the kind of Christian, nationalist, conservative that, is, I think, adored by today's national conservatives. When they wrote the principles of national conservatism, I think they were thinking of Orban. And the fact that he is now receiving standing ovations at CPAC, and if you saw his talk when he talked about the fact that marriage should be only between a man and a woman, standing ovation at CPAC. Tucker loves him. Tucker's flown to Hungary to interview him. Donald Trump just played golf with him yesterday. Yoram Hazony loves his politics. And he thinks it's appropriate for Hungary, even though Yom Hazoni is Jewish. So Orbán is not mixed. There's nothing good about Orbán. There's not a single virtue that Orbán represents. And and look, he's part of the EU. Why is Hungary, that condemns the EU all the time, that goes after the so-called neoliberals at the EU, why is Hungary part of the EU? Why? Because the EU massively subsidizes the Hungarian economy, because there's massive benefits. And him and his cronies have gotten rich off of the EU. This guy is corrupt, is a thug, is not for individual freedom. He's anti-individualism. I really don't get it. I mean, it boggles my mind how, Scott, you can claim to be an adherent to Ayn Rand's philosophy, you can claim to be an individualist, somebody who believes in individual freedom and in capitalism. Orbán doesn't believe in capitalism. Everything in Hungary is crony. Orbán doesn't believe in individual freedom. He believes in Christian nationalism. Orbán doesn't believe in freedom of speech. He has restricted speech throughout Hungary, particularly of the media. Orbán doesn't believe in anything you profess to believe. But because he's not on the left, because he hates the left, because he's anti the left, well, he's mixed. Hitler was mixed by that criteria. And I'm sure, I shouldn't say this, but Hitler was mixed by that criteria. That is the reality. And of course, Hitler didn't hesitate when the time came to sign a deal with the devil, which was his devil, which was Stalin, right? I don't give a pass to the left. I condemn the left as evil, as destructive, as horrible. I don't say they're mixed. There's nothing mixed about critical race theory. There's nothing mixed about, about anything, about socialism. There's nothing. I debate the left more than I debate the right. I cover the left on this show more than I cover the right. I condemn everything about the left. I condemn their moral subjectivism. I condemn postmodernist epistemology. I don't say that Biden is mixed. I don't say that Pelosi is mixed. Even when they do something good, I say, okay, she did something good, but she's really an evil human being. That's what I said yesterday. I mean, the idea that I give a pass to the left is disgusting, Scott. It's dishonest. Because you're on the show enough to know that that is not the case. The fact that I consider the right a bigger threat than the left is not giving the left a pass. I don't defend Biden. I condemn everything that Biden done. I condemned him on Afghanistan. I've condemned on everything on the economy. I placed the blame on inflation on him. I mean, really, you have to make this stuff up. Because I won't be as ruthless about thinking that the left is worse than the right on everything. And I do think they're worse than the right on many things. It's just that I don't think they're the long-term threat to the country. I don't think Biden is any more authoritarian than Trump was. That's a reality. But that's not me saying he's mixed. The fact that I think you guys have no ability to objectively analyze presidents, because if they're from the left, if they're the Democrats, they're immediately the devil. If they're on the right, they're mixed. If they're on the right, they're always mixed, or good, or brilliant, like Trump. But if they're on the left, they're evil, authoritarian dictators, always. That's you being unobjective. I try to be objective, but that doesn't mean I say they're mixed. Yeah, I mean, appeal to authority does not work on me, Scott, and it shouldn't work on you, and it shouldn't work on anybody in the audience here. All right, I'm getting angry. I should call it quits. I mean, it really does piss me off. The willingness of people who call themselves objectivists to accept anything, the worst kind of evil from the right, and just fine because they're not the left, tries my patience, if you haven't noticed. All right, everybody. I will actually see you on Saturday. We've done good in the Super Chat the last couple of days, primarily as a result of some big whales coming in. Thank you to everybody who did the Super Chat today. Saturday and Sunday there will be shows. I'm not sure exactly what time, but I will let you know when. I will put it up on YouTube as soon as I know what time it is. John, thank you. Cheer up, he says. I will. As soon as I leave this, I'm going to go see my wife and I'll cheer up. So thanks, John. I appreciate it. And thank all of you. And don't forget that you can vote any way you want. I don't care how you vote. That's not the issue. The fact that you're an apologist for the worst people on the right, that I find offensive. You can vote for whoever you want to vote. Your vote, luckily for me, doesn't really matter that much. What did I want to tell you? Yes, I did want to say that Justin loves Orban as an objectivist. I think you're delusional, Justin. You're either delusional in your love or delusional in objectivist, but you don't understand objectivism if you can love Orban. Yeah, I know I'm insulting people, but that's okay. Let me see. I will be in California next week, so we'll do a show on Tuesday, maybe also on Monday, and then after that I'm going to be in California for 2.5 weeks, which will be fun. I will try to do shows from there to kind of let you know how things are going. I will, yeah, so I will, that's kind of where we are as we go off. Yes, it's completely objective to say Orban is evil. Yes. I could say he might do something good if he ever does something good. He hasn't. He's a Putin apologist, and he's a crony scumbag as a politician. So when he does something good, I'll say he did something good, but he's still evil. And given that he's in a position of power over people's lives, I don't know if you've ever been to Hungary. I have. He's in a position of power over people's lives. He's an evil bastard who's destroyed a lot of people's lives. See, guys. Yeah, people voted for Hitler too. People vote against their self-interest all the time. People do vote in the really, really bad ways all the time. So people vote for him. So what? So he's popular. Stalin is popular in Russia today. Very popular. Stalin would win an election in Russia today. So we should all support Stalin. He might be mixed. Maybe Stalin's mixed because people vote for him. I didn't say Orban is Hitler. See, you're not being objective. You don't listen to what I actually say. Bye, everybody.